the high sign? Okay, thank you. So before we get started, I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that there is simultaneous Spanish interpretation happening on the Mi Salud Mi Charco Facebook page, and additional information is available on ecemergency.org or garfield-county.com. You can check out those websites for additional information. So on behalf of myself, Commissioner Jeannie McQueenie, and my fellow commissioners, Kathy Chandler-Henry and Matt Scher, we just want to thank you all for being here. Thank you for all that you're doing, and really for the manner in which you're doing it. We're so grateful for all the people and the agencies that are working so hard to protect our communities. We want to thank you for the open communication and the high level of collaboration allowing us all to get this work done. It is very much appreciated. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer to kick this off and get us started. And thanks, everyone, and please continue to be safe out there.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Again, welcome. My name is Jennifer Mislevy. I'm the Public Information Officer for the Grizzly Creek Fire. Again, we have a very informative community meeting for everybody. We'll get started off with our incident meteorologist, but first, like she said, we're airing it live with English and also simulcast as Spanish. We'll be collecting your questions along the way and providing a question and answer at the end. So if you have any specific fire-related questions, please address those in the chat. With that, we'll have Matt Jeglum, our incident meteorologist for Grizzly Creek Fire.
Good evening. Yeah, my name is Matt Jeglum. I'm the incident meteorologist on the Grizzly Creek Fire. I work for the National Weather Service in Salt Lake City. My day job is a research meteorologist there at the regional headquarters. And so me and other incident meteorologists like myself get deployed to fires all over the western United States. There's 75 of us in the program, and right now there are a lot of us that are out in the field, including in California. Now, why do we need meteorologists on fires? There's something called the wildland fire triangle, and it's essentially a triangle that the three sides are the pillars of what makes a wildland fire behave in a certain way. And those three pillars are fuels, weather, and topography or terrain. And now the terrain doesn't move, at least not on any scale that we care about. Maybe if you're talking about a few million years, it'll change, but it's fuels and weather that are the main things that are changing on a daily, weekly, yearly basis that are going to influence fire. Now, the weather is obviously influenced by the weather, but the fuels themselves are actually influenced by the weather. So when it comes to making good predictions of future fire behavior at any scale, either whether it's the next hour, the next day, the next month, having good weather information is critical. And so in my job on this fire, I generally am looking out 1 to 2 weeks at the most, using various weather models, observations, satellites, radars. We can install some of our own weather stations that are available for deployment nationally on fires. And we use all that information to put together a weather briefing for the leadership of the fire. Now, for the Grizzly Creek Fire in particular, today was a pretty exciting day. We had a lot of thunderstorm activity in the vicinity of the fire, had some lightning, some gusty winds, some pretty heavy rain by recent standards, although by the normal standards that you guys have in this part of the world, probably wasn't that impressive. And thankfully, this is the last day that we're going to see thunderstorms for a few days. Tomorrow's looking drier. Saturday's looking dry as well. Sunday, the thunderstorm potential starts ticking up a little bit, but starting on Monday and going into next week is when things start to get pretty interesting, especially in the vicinity of the Grizzly Creek Fire, because this really big high pressure that's been sitting over the western United States and been providing really hot temperatures to almost the entirety of the western U.S. is going to be shifting a little bit east. So it's been really hot, it's going to stay hot, but as that ridge shifts east, it's going to open the door for the typical monsoonal moisture that provides for the thunderstorm activity in Colorado in the summer. And so that's generally encouraging. By the middle of next week, we'll be having quite a bit more moisture in the atmosphere, and so we could get a lot more rain onto the fire to help tamp it down. The flip side of that is that the potential for higher rainfall amounts to cause rocks and dirt to start moving in the more extreme terrain of Glenwood Canyon. But obviously I'll be keeping an eye on that as we get closer in time. That's basically all I had for the weather and what I do on the fire. So any questions that come in, I'd be happy to answer later on. Thank you.
All right, Matt, thank you very much. Next, we're going to have the operational flyover with Jeff Serber, Operations Section Chief, Great Basin Team 1. Go ahead, Jeff.
Good evening. So for today, it was a much better day for firefighting than a lot of the ones we've had in the past. When we got here, we had red flag days, red flag warnings for wind, temperature, relative humidity. Everything was pretty wild and things were running everywhere. We've had a definite change in that, pretty obviously for the folks that have been following this fire and live around here. And it's allowed us to do a much better job of tamping down the edges. You know, when the fire doesn't pick up and run, we're much better off being able to get right up against it and work in a manner that you know, with equipment and by hand that keeps us from we're on those red flag days, we just stand back and get people out and things out of the way a lot of time because we can't fight with Mother Nature when it comes to that, even with aircraft. So anyway, today what happened, well, first of all, I'll apologize for this map. Somehow we got it processed without the black perimeter that we had on it yesterday. So first off, I'd like to say that that black perimeter isn't burning again. It's just a mapping error. So we had some black line, I believe, as of this morning, we had black line in this area right here I'll start right here in the I-70 corridor near No Name. We had a black edge along here, I think, showing that was contained. We're carrying it up to the north, up the No Name drainage. We're feeling confident that this has cooled down quite a bit. You can see by the overall map of the fire, before when I talked about it, it had a lot more intense heat, what we call intense heat. And if you look at this, say zoom right in on this spot, some of the more intense spots are the redder. This map also doesn't show that before they had this area here is more recent burn, and the yellow is older and cooler burn. So you can kind of tell that we don't have those areas of high intensity that we used to have. This high intensity fire over here on Division X-ray, this area here, this area, this area, and this area, and this one. This is a burnout operation that we instituted. So you can kind of see what we're trying to do on that division. And before I jump around on the map and make everybody sick, I'm going to go back over here to No Name and start over. So we're back over at No Name. I'll go clockwise around the fire. No Name looks good all the way up the canyon. It's still moving into No Name Canyon right here and into Grizzly Canyon, which we have expected it to do. It's moving much slower. You can see those edges aren't growing near as fast. That's because we lack the wind. We have higher relative humidities, and the fire isn't moving near as fast as it was before. That doesn't mean that there's anything in its way in its that's going to stop its progression up Grizzly or No Name at this point in time. We are out in front of the fire, way in front of the fire right now, with contingency lines over here. You can kind of see where this road system is right down on top of the ridge above No Name. We're following this up to Windy Point, then we're following from Windy Point all the way out around. If you folks that know where Duck Lake is, we're all the way that far out because we don't have the opportunity to cross these canyons and actually be able to stop the fire at this point in time. We continue to assess and figure out if the fire slows down. Maybe we can find a little bit of a way that we could cut off some of the timber stands and save the watershed, save more timber in that watershed, because that's a very important watershed for the city of Glenwood. We're doing our best to both try other methods of crossing those canyons, or if we cannot identify any other way to get across the canyon other than to go way out to the north, we'll work on trying to minimize the severity of the burn or the heat of the burn. The problem in this area is that we have heavy timber stands of fir and spruce, and those are very difficult to conduct a low-intensity burn. In ponderosa pine, we can do low-intensity burns in the understory, and the understory burns and the trees remain green. In spruce fir, like this is in here, it has ladder fuel. Those, as you know, the spruce and fir a lot of time grow with limbs all the way down to the ground. And pretty much what happens is the ground fire will creep underneath them and take out one tree, then it takes out two trees, and then pretty soon the whole stand of trees is on fire. So it's very difficult to do any kind of burn, whether it be natural burn or our own burns, to try to limit the severity that ends up being complementary. It usually ends up taking out a whole stand of trees. So we'll do our best to hold down the severity of that burn, but no promises because of the fuel type. These two pockets in here are being cut off right now. This is our division Tango. You can see where Coffee Pot Spring is there. We've come across in front of this fire. We're coming across here in front of the fire. We have people along the edge of the fire where it comes up out of the trees, working on those edges to put them out so it doesn't continue up, but we're also building contingency line below Coffee Pot Road, which is this white line right up there. So we're moving across. We're having a lot of success out on the north end. I believe this map should have indicated, like I say, I apologize for an old perimeter. This from Coffee Pot Springs all the way back to I-70 on tomorrow's map should be a black line, which means we feel comfortable that that's not going to escape. And that should be reflected on tomorrow's map. So through a lot of good work of all those folks that have been in there walking up and down that steep country from I-70 up towards Coffee Pot, walking down, the equipment, everything that's been in there, we've been able to turn that line black on tomorrow's map. Moving over to Bear Ranch, we conducted this burn right here night before last, and then we've constructed a dozer line that drops off the ridge, comes down above the structures in the top of Spruce Creek, and this is all burned off. This has been burned off, and then today we were burning up onto what the crews are calling Ike Ridge, which is the ridge between the main Bear Ranch over here where the pointer is and the other Bear Ranch improvements that are in Spruce Creek Canyon. So they were able to carry fire all the way around a previously constructed road. I believe it might be this road right here that you can see that crosses the top. So this was lit this morning, and they carried fire all the way down this road right there. Coming down this road when I was there, it was going really well. And they lit it earlier in the day because of the thunderstorms. We were trying to beat it and get all the way around the hill before the thunderstorms got here, but it was about 11:30 or 12 maybe when they hit this corner on the ridge and decided not to continue because of the downdrafts from thunderstorms, and they were afraid if they continued to light this fire, the downdrafts would blow embers across the line and we'd get fire on the wrong side of the line. So they held up there. This is all holding really nice, so we pretty much have, it's not a contained line, but you'll see on tomorrow's map that from this point where it crosses the ridge all the way back to where that fire, let me zoom out here, all the way from this point on the ridge, all the way back through here and over to this burnout operation should be fairly secure by tomorrow. We still have a little piece of right in here that needs to be burned out, and you might see a little bit more smoke from a burnout either this afternoon, this evening, tomorrow, whenever the weather conditions are right to keep that fire on the side of the line that we want it to be on. So that's what those folks are all doing in that Bear Ranch area right now. When you pop out up here on top, we still have a large complement of people on what we call our Division Zulu. That's this whole southern portion of the fire up on top. And it hasn't been moving. As you can see, it's pretty much stable up there, and they're just working direct right up against the edge. They didn't use very many helicopters today. They haven't needed a lot of water support. They do have water sources up there that they can fill engines out of and transport water around and put out hose lays and just pretty much spray water and cool all that down. So that edge of the fire is coming along real good. And last but not least, we have our Division Alpha. So to try to explain this a little bit better, this is important for especially for the folks in Glenwood. Can't get that to spin today. There we go. So let's come back this way. So right here, here's the main I-70 corridor. We're looking north and east. And right in this location about here, there's a power pole that a lot of people might know where it is. When you're on I-70, you can look up and see this power pole that's right up on the top for a power line that just kind of one of those amazing power lines that just goes almost straight up the hill. So right from that power pole all the way back over here to a dozer line that we've constructed out of this aspen patch is Division Alpha. What we've done is we've created a contingency line that goes all the way down to Glenwood behind the houses. It's a Boy Scout, partially a Boy Scout trail, I understand, partially dozer line, partially existing roads, a lot of different fire breaks, I guess you'd call them, are being used in the event we need to use them, but we don't want to use them. So what we're doing in here right now is we laid a bunch more retardant on this piece of line using helicopters and the portable retardant base that's down on the highway. And we continue to put retardant in there. We had a infrared flight today that I haven't actually seen yet, but what we had was a flight that'll show where the heat sources are on the edge. Up on the right-hand side of the screen, upper right, we got bulldozers in there and started working down this edge into this side slope road right here that goes through the middle of that burn right there. So what we've done is we're dropping equipment down into that. People feel that that's cool enough to do so safely, working right along the edge of the burn. There's a lot of that that's already cold, so we're just working along the edge, checking inside the oak brush to make sure there's no spot fires that were spots that thrown 4 or 5 days ago that continue to smolder. We have to go out into the green brush and look for that kind of stuff to make sure that when we build the line, we either incorporate those spots into the line or we take care of the spots independently. They'll be working on this line for probably 2 more days, trying to cut this off in a direct, what we call a direct fashion, so that we don't have to come back out here to Lookout Mountain and the Lookout Park and drop down and deal with taking it right into the city of Glenwood Springs and impacting all the things that get impacted by that long 8-mile line and more fire on the ground. So that's pretty much what we're doing on Alpha. Hopefully we'll be successful there and we won't need to use that contingency line. We also have, like I said before, we have a group called the Structure IA group that is available to do initial attack in an area here we've been given a boundary that's much larger than the fire we have, and if we get lightning strikes and they need equipment and things to respond, we have an IA area. So yesterday we had a new start over off of the 115 road about 4 or 5 miles south of the fire, and we responded with a lot of equipment, a lot of aircraft. The local fire districts also responded with their equipment, and through a well-coordinated effort, especially in the air, held it to about 50 acres. There was probably at least 6 helicopters in the air at the same time. We had single engine air tankers, which are the little crop duster type looking airplanes. We had LATs, what they call LATs, large air tankers, which they were small jets there yesterday. And we had the VLATs ordered and they were on their way, but they weren't needed. So through all that effort, the fire was knocked down and went into the evening. We felt that it was fairly well contained. We left some crews and people out there all night long. Some of our night shift walked around the fire. They dealt with it with engines. They staffed it all night. Then we switched back out with some of our day shift resources that stayed there all day. And this afternoon, when one of the thunderstorms came by, it let out some downdraft winds, and the thing picked up on a corner. And like I say, it's never out till it's out kind of thing, and that's why we spend so much time along these lines before we try to color them black instead of red. But it was able to take off out of a corner. They immediately responded with 2 helicopters. It's continued to get larger. They launched 2 more helicopters and held it to 10 acres, and it's now knocked down again. We have a dozer over there again and engines and all that. So we'll continue to have a presence there for however long it takes to make sure that thing doesn't have the opportunity to add any more acres than it did today. And it's one of those things you can walk right by something that is under the leaves and creeping through the leaves, the old dry oak brush leaves. And then, you'll walk 10 feet and you can turn around sometimes and you can, all of a sudden something will spot up that's not visible. You'll smell it sometimes when you walk by and you'll stand there for a little while and you can find it. But they're almost invisible sometimes, and then a little bit of wind hits them and it takes off just super fast. So that's kind of what happened over there today and on the rest of the fire. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff, again for that great information on the fire. Next, we have Marty Adel, Great Basin Team 1 Incident Commander. He'll be talking about the general fire outlook.
Good evening. Once again, I'm Marty Adel. And I'll be talking about the general outlook for the fire, as well as a timeline for the incident management team. As everybody's probably seen on the news, we've been nationally getting very busy regarding wildfires. California, Oregon, Nevada, Idaho all increased their fire activity in the past several days due to a tremendous amount of lightning and dry conditions that obviously you have here in Colorado. So with that, resources are very, very tight across the nation. Resources are very tight across the nation. We are working hand in hand, not only with the dispatchers in the area, in the state, also with multiple fires, also in Colorado, to share the resources, a little bit of lend and lease. If we have a hotshot crew or aircraft that we can lend them for a couple days to knock something out, then they'll give it back. We're doing a tremendous amount of coordination along those lines. But with that, we still have 850 people on our fire that are aiding the operations that Jeff was just talking about. So that's going pretty well. As of right now, we've caught a couple breaks with some of the weather that we had and the tremendous amount of work. We have been able to put some containment line, black line on the map, and we are progressing forward in securing not only priorities, but the objectives that were given to us on this fire. With that being said, we are coming to the end of our rotation. Each incident management team has a rotation of 14 days, unless some particular criteria can be met, and with the objectives, the priorities, and the tremendous amount of work that is needed for this fire, we are going to get an incident management team in behind us. We're looking at ordering a team this weekend sometime so we can transition with them, download them all the information, convey with them the plans, the objectives, and the priorities for this area, this fire, and our cooperators and partners that we've been working with. I want to first start out, though, and ensure everybody that this will be one of several things. This transition will be seamless. There will be no large difference in what's being done, the communication, or the tactics being done. The resources that are on the fire currently do not leave when the incident management team leaves either. They will stay and they will continue to work and work through their rotation. Also, many, if not, or I shouldn't say many, but all the contacts that we have made throughout the organization, whether it be with the agencies, the partners we're working with, the community, the sheriff's offices, the emergency management, all those contacts will be made, and the operation, once again, will be seamless. This is going to be done, as I stated. We'll be ordering another crew to come in early next week. We're anticipating on a Tuesday time frame, and then shadow for a day, and then they will take over most likely on Wednesday morning, and the team, the Great Basin Incident Management Team 1, will step aside and go home for a couple days off and go back up on rotation for the next assignment. For that's the outlook and timeline for the team at this point, and I'll take questions later on. All
right, thanks, Marty. Appreciate that. Next, we have the Eagle County Sheriff James Van Beek will give an update on evacuations, e-alerts, and restrictions.
Good evening, Sheriff Van Beek. So there are no active investigations. We have several pre-evacuations throughout the county. So pre-evacuation remains for Sweetwater. It remains for the Dotsero area. We currently also have some of the areas over on Cottonwood Pass Road that are in pre-evac. And then we also have pre-evacuations currently in the Milk Creek and the Horse Mountain area. A few updates real quick on some other fires that have also come in. So we have the Murphy Creek Fire, which is the one on New York Mountain. Last report is they were maintaining as about 1 acre and crews have remained on scene and that they are making very good progress with it. This is in the wilderness area. There was also a report last night on the Upper Gypsum Creek in the Hardscrabble Mountain area. There was several attempts to locate. Nothing was found, so this is good news because we're not seeing fire, we're not seeing smoke. We're going to continue to monitor that area and watch it very, very closely. The Camp Hale fire, last report was fully contained and was fully controlled. Also this afternoon, as many of you know, there was another wildland fire start in Eagle County. It was south of Horse Mountain Ranch and Milk Creek area. There is a pre-evacuate still in that area. They're still actively fighting that fire. This is the Ruby Creek or Rube Creek fire. There is a unified command. It's with BLM, the Greater Eagle Fire Protection District, with the Sheriff's Office supporting. At last report, they had 50 firefighters that were assigned to the incident. At about 5:40 this evening, it was reported to be about 9 acres inside of Pinyon and Juniper. They had air assets that were coming in, and they had retardant had boxed in about 90% of the perimeter, which was good news. There is 0% containment. There was some assets at risk, a few homes, watershed, and some power lines, and that's going to be the primary focus in protecting all those. They had several aircraft, so they had 1 helicopter, 2 single-engine air takers, the seats, and 2 large air takers that were supporting on that one. And again, Horse Mountain Ranch remains on pre-evacuation. We are still currently in a red flag warning for this evening until about 9 p.m. So we're asking everyone to use extreme caution. We are in a stage 2 fire restrictions in Eagle County. There was also a fire restriction put out by the governor. Some people have had questions about which one supersedes the other. Our restriction is slightly more stringent than the governor's, and so we're holding to Eagle County's stage 2 fire restriction at this time. And again, as you've heard over and over and over again, we're going to keep telling everybody, if you want to know what's going on, you need to sign up for the alerts. We are trying to get deputies into the area, but there's a lot of houses and a lot of territory to cover. And we're asking everyone to please sign up for the Eagle County Alerts, the ecalert.org. And if you want updates of all the active activity that's going on in the area, we ask you to go to ecemergency.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Garfield County Sheriff Lou Valerio was unable to attend this evening. He wanted to report that there's no change in evacuations or pre-evacuations. And if you have any other information or would like e-alerts, please go to garco911.com. Next, we have Lisa Steffler. She's the White River National Forest Deputy Supervisor. She'll be giving you an update on the Forest Service.
Great, thank you. Good night, everyone. Glad to be here again. Day 11 is where we are with this fire. Some days it feels like it's been just a flash, and some days it feels like it's been forever, and I'm sure it does for everyone who's dealing with this in the communities around the fire. Day 11, and we still know that we have ways to go on that. So really focused right now with the current team on making preparations for a smooth transition to a new team. That'll be part of our focus in the next couple of days, and we're assured that we're going to get another high-quality team, same as this one. So that's the kind of thing that happens all the time on long-term fires like this. Nothing unusual about that whatsoever. We can't have these folks here working 20, 30, 40 days in a row without a day off. So we're going to give them a day off and get a fresh group of leadership in. Let's see, I want to come back to something I mentioned at our last public meeting having to do with this assessment team that's coming in. And part of us thinking about where we can reopen areas and where areas are safe for people to be is looking at some of the immediate risks to rockfall and debris flow due to some of these storms. Most of you know that Glenwood Canyon is extremely steep. So that assessment has been ongoing this week, and tomorrow we'll be meeting with some of those key partners, CDOT and the City of Glenwood Springs and County Emergency Services, to go over some of those findings and help them plan for potential storm events, as well as all the things that we might need to do to make that corridor safe so that we can reopen it. So that's on a good track. I'm looking forward to seeing what they have to share with us. And thanks for sharing the IA. One of the things I just want to say, people have asked again and again, what can we do to help? Well, I think the most important thing people can do to help, as we found yesterday, is to observe those fire restrictions. The last thing in the world that this team and your county resources need is another fire. Although we got our hands around these fires, it was a lot. Those initial attacks yesterday stretched our resources, and although we got on them, really, really need people to be observing those fire restrictions, whether you're at home or out on the forest. There's just no open burning, no campfires. So please, please take care of that. And as we approach hunting season, I know that people are looking forward to getting out in the woods, and the tradition of being at hunting camp or being out in the forest, again, really, really need people to be observing safe practices out there. And I'll touch really briefly on I-70 again, because of course that's on people's minds. Just as we've been saying this week, we're again going through all those different steps that need to happen to help make that safe to reopen, both safe for the firefighters and the CDOT crews that are working in there, as well as motorists and people traveling in there. So more information on that as we get closer to a decision there. But I would say that this work that the team has been doing and some of this assessment about safety and debris flow is going to be really important to that. I'll also share that Xcel Energy has been, every place that it is safe, they are working feverishly to restore that power line, so that's all ready to go, and that won't be a barrier to reopening I-70, having to do their repair work there. So that's really terrific for everyone. And I think I'll leave it at that and wait for questions. Thanks for the opportunity to be here tonight.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you, everyone, for that great and valuable information we shared. Next, we're going to turn it over to Kim Osborne, our moderator for questions. Go ahead, Kim.
Thank you. We only have a few questions tonight, and we'll go with Sheriff Van Beek. The first question for you is there a time frame to move the helipad at No Name out? When it's done with it, I'm sorry, this question's a little, when it's critical at that location, they're asking when it's going to be moved out.
That's not my call, that's down that way.
Actually, I'm going to defer that to Mr. He's the operations specialist here.
We've had several discussions about that. Normally what happens is we order there's an ordering process for the amount of retardant we think we'll use. Those bins are big. Sometimes you end up with a little more than you need, and what we are going to do with that excess is to continue to hit that Division Alpha that I described, which is right above that portable retardant base on the south side, because there's persistent smokes. I just heard about one when I was driving to this meeting that pop up whenever we get a little bit of breeze blowing on that section of line. It's an oak brush that's partially burned. There's been a hesitancy to walk down into that with fire personnel and put people in danger of having to run uphill to try to get away from something that they can't see below them. That oak brush is extremely tall, and we don't want to do that. So what we're doing instead is to lay a lot of retardant on that piece of line in order to try to settle that the bit of heat that's left in there, so that we can send personnel down in there, whether it be whether it be equipment, whether it be single individuals that walk down in there, but that's what we're doing with that retardant. And I would expect in the conversations we've had that maybe by the end of the day tomorrow, that would be starting to get wrapped up and moved.
Okay, I'll have another couple more questions for you since you're there. Thanks, Jeff. So it's officially at 4%, but do we have an idea as a ballpark figure what containment will show tomorrow after the black line is installed?
I'm a lousy statistician, I'm a lousy at judging. I don't want to put off your question. If you look at the fire map, which I don't have a mouse to actually, if you can pull that map back down, yeah, that's fine. You can see the amount of perimeter on that map compared to the length of the fire. Let's say that fire, just throw it out there. I don't know what the length of the fire is, 20 miles maybe more. But anyway, you can see that perimeter goes in and out all over the place. And we've had fires that are 150 miles of perimeter and they're 20 miles long. So what happens is we put effort into that containment on the fire, and we may end up with 10 miles, which is quite a bit, 10 or 20 miles of contained line that a lot of effort has gone to by a lot of people, and it only shows up as being like 10% or 5%, and it's kind of for us, it's kind of like, wow, that's a lot of effort for only showing that much containment on. And so we have that same feeling sometimes. It's like, really, all the time we've been here and all the effort we've put in only shows 15% containment. It's because there's so much perimeter on that fire. What typically happens is we are conservative about showing something as contained because of, as an example, yesterday's fire sneaking out today. So we like to see 24 to 48 hours at least of no heat along the line when we have our IR flights, before we start saying, we're pretty sure this isn't going to escape. What happens when we first get here is that 24 to 48 hours, it takes quite a while for us to get in place. And then once we feel like we've taken action on a piece of line, it then takes 24 to 48 hours from the time we take the action to say, okay, we're confident. So there's a lag period from the time we get to the fire and get started until that containment starts to show, and then it increases dramatically, typically in a shorter period of time. So you're going to see that containment go up. I'll throw a number out there, maybe 10% tomorrow. I don't know. I do know that we're adding quite a bit of black perimeter to that fire tomorrow. I've kind of been involved in figuring out what the folks out there feel is ready to be turned black, as we call it, just that perimeter that we turn black, and that's going to be a sizable increase from what we had before.
I got a couple more for you. You made a comment that you said when you drop equipment in, such as bulldozers, how do you do that? So maybe explain.
Oh, okay. Did I use that term? Drop? Okay. Sorry about that. The folks out here on the power line drop a lot of stuff. I'm amazed at what they lift with their helicopters and put up there to rebuild the power lines. But I probably used it in reference to Division Alpha, where we're building downhill line into the oak brush. We've had bulldozers up there on top along the south side for days now, and what they're doing is that is downhill line construction dropping off towards the river canyon. And if I said drop, I meant downhill, dropping downhill. That's probably how I meant it. But I had another question today about bulldozers and the use of bulldozers as compared with hand crews and that kind of thing. Bulldozers are much more efficient. They build a wider line a lot faster than people with chainsaws can do. So we tend to use heavy equipment in order to get line in faster, that's wider, more defendable, and that allows us to burn off of it when we need to, or just have a wider section of mineral soil, what we call mineral soil, where all the burnable material is gone off that surface so that the fire can't creep through and get started on the other side. If you build a hand line that's only 2 or 3 feet wide and there's a root that catches on fire and works its way underground, it can pop up on the other side, and then you have fire on the wrong side of the line. If you use a bulldozer that digs, or at least makes a lot wider line, there's a lot less chance that those kinds of escape fires will happen.
Okay. And the last question for you, how does the smoke and ash affect the operations of aircraft fighting fire?
It affects it almost, it's probably every single day we've been here it has. They have to be able to, number one, see one another. They have to be able to see the ground. They have to be able to see the point where they go in to dip for water. So there's a lot of visibility issues. If you're looking at a piece of fire wondering why nobody's flying on it, it may be because the helicopters can't get down in a canyon to get their water because it's too smoky in the bottom. Or if you're looking at it from the bottom and kind of going, you know, it's difficult to judge because on a fire this size, you could have clear air on one side, smoky air on the other. And what we typically do, we launch what we call an air attack first thing in the morning. That's a fixed wing airplane that goes up and circles all the way around the fire, looks at the air quality and determines whether to launch helicopters and air tankers and whatever else is necessary. If they get up there and they fly around in that fixed wing airplane and they kind of go, you know what, I can't even see the ground and this ain't going to work. They pretty much call back to the helibase and say, you know, we're going to delay the use of helicopters until the air clears. And so the folks are all standing there on the ground sometimes kind of going, man, I wish we could get some water. And it's a frustrating experience for the folks on the ground, but safety is the first priority. Aviation safety especially, not especially, everybody's safety is important, but aviation safety won't be compromised. So pretty much we're always looking at the fact that we want those folks it doesn't make sense to launch aircraft and then go back and have them land for no reason. So that's the kind of thing. I hope I answered that question properly, but the air quality is super important, and it can be at different levels above the fire. We could have what happens on a lot of days when you have those big burning days, like where we had a 6-mile run, is that there's a large column of smoke and they can't even get underneath the smoke to see what's going on, let alone drop water or do anything with it. So those are the times when we set the aircraft down, wait it out. The people on the ground have to get out of the way. We evacuate people sometimes. All those things happen because of visibility. Sometimes we have to just err on the side of caution and evacuate people because we know that fire is moving pretty fast, but nobody can even see into the smoke to see how fast or how far it's progressed. So from an aviation standpoint, that's why the air quality is so important.
Thank you, Jeff. This next question will go to Sheriff Van Beek. And the question is, has the cause of the fire been determined?
Actually, that's got to go to the Forest Service, I think, because the Forest Service, it started on Forest Service, and they were there in the primary investigation.
So our investigators have been on the ground there. I have not seen a final report on that. Still under investigation. So we'll release that when we have that firm and finalized.
Thank you. Lisa, another question for you. Has anyone seen have you had any reports of bighorn sheep they've been seen in the area? People are worried about them.
Yeah. I have seen bighorn sheep on both ends of the fire, both the lower kind of no-name Glenwood Springs and as well as on the other end. Haven't seen any in that immediate middle part that's been impacted by the fire. They are incredibly resilient and wily and know their way around that canyon, and they are moving in and out of places that are safe. Yeah, I have seen them on both ends.
Yep.
You've been doing some driving?
I have,
Yeah.
same thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all the questions that we have.
All right, thank you, Kim. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining the meeting today. Great informative information. If you still have additional questions, please post them on the meeting chat line, and we'll get those answered. The next meeting is set for Saturday, August 22nd at 6 p.m. We'll have it live as well. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you for joining.